Reporting has just started. Welcome everybody to Amplify Science, utilizing the assessment system for administrators. Again, apologies for my camera not showing. It seems to have been disabled despite having signed in and out. Welcome, my name is Reshma. This is a session designed for administrators on utilizing the Amplify Science assessment system. And as you may have just received this a consent box, this session is in fact being recorded. So my name is Reshma. I'm from Amplify. Over the past couple of years, I've had the pleasure of supporting educators and administrators like yourself in utilizing this program with fidelity, and I hope to do the same for you today. You may want to use two windows for today's webinar. If you've been in my previous sessions, you know that I usually demonstrate something, then give you a chance to practice and or reflect. Just some norms for today. Again, I see that we only have one participant. Hi again, Rachel. Thank you for muting yourself. That just reduces background noise, but please do come off of mute to share your thinking with any questions you might have. Please do find the chat box and make sure you have a note catcher present if that's something that you like to do. And this session is only as productive as we hear from you. I'm certainly not the only expert in this room. The expertise is in here, and we certainly want to hear from you to make this a collaborative session. The objectives for today are threefold. We want to gain an understanding of the Amplify Science system, which includes both formative and summative assessments. We're going to go ahead and explore the classwork and reporting features, as well as the information found in the new administrator dashboard for middle school. And we want to gain an understanding of how to use program features, other program features, to better support your educators that you work with. If you'd like to set up a note catcher, here's a suggested format. I'll go ahead and give you a few moments to go ahead and do that. Yes, that is a suggested format. Hopefully you have it set up either on Google Docs or on a piece of paper. Here is the agenda for today. In order for us to achieve our objectives, we're going to go ahead with some welcome and introductions, setting a vision, and a brief program overview. If you can go ahead and share either off of mute your name, role, and borough. So for example, I have my name is Reshma. I was a teacher in the past, teacher, and hypothetically from Brooklyn North. Feel free to come off of mute or share in the chat. It's always great to know who's in the room.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm an assistant principal and I am in the Bronx.
Welcome, Rachel. Great, thank you. Rachel, it's just us today, so feel free to interject with any questions, any specific support you need at any point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So if you can go ahead and share in the chat, just as an anticipatory activity for me to get a better sense of what methods does your school use to gather student data at the moment. Feel free to come off of mute or share in the chat.
We use exit tickets. We use formative assessments, just as far as classwork, projects, things like that.
Great. And
Lab.
that, go ahead.
And labs, I'm sorry.
Yeah, great. That's actually very much in alignment with the Amplify Science formative assessments. We have most of our assessments are in fact formative in nature. So having that alignment from the start is wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And then also, if you were to, in concert with how you share student data, this has been an unprecedented school year. So setting a vision from the outset, even though we're in the middle of the school year, would be useful. So just for me to get a sense of where you are, what are you hoping for your students to get out of science by the end of the school year? And it could be any of these possibilities or beyond.
I particularly like the ones that you have up there, is specifically like develop flexible scientific understanding, cultivating a love of science, and just kind of thinking like and working like a real scientist.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think that's a very flexible vision to have for this particular year. And you'll see that our program, in fact, even with the remote resources, continues to allow students to think like scientists and engineers and engage in that authentic inquiry, even though in-person instruction hasn't been happening to that degree. Thank you for sharing. I'm just going to go over a brief program overview. Again, feel free to interrupt me at any point with any questions or further comments you have. So our program, as you may already know, is aligned with the next generation science standards, and New York has adopted a version of that called the NYS-SLS, made a few meaningful revisions to disciplinary core ideas, added some performance expectations, and these new standards really ask students to not only learn content, which is traditionally resides in the core ideas, but to figure out the content through these big ideas called the cross-cutting concepts, and vis-a-vis the science and engineering practices, those same practices that scientists and engineers engage in. So our curriculum was built from the ground up to address these standards 100%. And with the program, these are the resources that come. We have our student investigation notebook, articles available in digital or print, simulation, classroom slides available in Google Slides and PowerPoint for each and every lesson, hands-on and print materials, assessments and reporting, the digital or print teacher's guide, which we'll be spending quite a bit of time in today. It's also important to note that for this year especially, that all assignments can be assigned in Google Classroom. So when your educator, a member of your staff, clicks the Google Classroom icon in any activity, it will allow them to post a link for the students, and it will direct the students directly to the activity in the student interface. Some brief aspects about our approach, very briefly. As you saw on the previous slide, each of our units is a problem-based deep dive. So at the beginning of each unit, students are introduced to a real-world problem, and then they collect evidence from multiple sources by doing, talking, reading, writing, visualizing to build an increasingly complex explanation to this unit phenomena. And in middle school, at the end of each core unit, they're given an opportunity to apply their new learnings to a brand new problem. So the teacher can really get a sense of, have my students deeply learned? Just so I get a sense of where you are throughout today's session, which, by the way, will be slightly abbreviated because we have a very, it's only one of us. If you can let me know, what is the first step to the Amplify Science approach, so I get a sense of where you are in your understanding of the program.
B, introducing a phenomenon or real world problem.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so seems like you have a pretty fair understanding of the program. Thank you. Okay, great. And then, in fact, yes, that is the first step. And then the multimodal learning, to hone in on that. Students are introduced to the problem. And then it's important to know that they're not really engaging in all these modalities in silo, but rather each science concept students figure out through at least 3 concerted modalities which work in concert with each other. Okay, this was really meant for a larger group session. I'll go ahead and skip these frequent checks of understanding we have throughout today's session that was originally meant for us to get a gauge of where different administrators are in their understanding of the program. Here is the middle school curriculum. You'll note that this year certain units have been rearranged to allow alignment with the release of the at-home units, and note that the companion lessons, although they're not here, are also suggested to be completed in order to fill the gaps between the national standards and the New York State version. I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions. Of course, feel free to interrupt me at any point if you do.
No questions.
Rachel, I was wondering, is there, if there's anything in particular about assessments that you wanted to focus on, or anything about the program, you can certainly customize and gear this session towards, anything you need. So please don't hesitate to let me know about that.
You know what? Okay, hold on a second. Actually, can you go back 2 slides with the, yeah, this one. So as we're dealing with this pandemic, I find that my teachers are kind of struggling with, I don't want them to focus on the quantity of getting to every unit, but rather the quality of it. So is there kind of like, I don't know what I'm looking for, what I'm asking. So sort of like a way to tell them like which units or which lessons within the units to prioritize to make sure that the students are gaining, maybe they won't get like a full thorough understanding, but they will have like the basics.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially during this time. Rachel, have you seen the at-home units yet?
Yes,
Okay.
I've briefly looked through them.
Yeah, and if you look further, if you haven't already noticed, the at-home units are actually condensed versions of the Amplify Science lessons. I'm just going to grade 7. So for example, here is the entire grade 7 scope and sequence, the order of the units. So the original lessons, as you recall, had, if you compare right here, grade 7, for example, had the engineering internships. Those are taken out. So the core and the launch units are prioritized, and the original Amplify Science lessons are 45 minutes long. These are each 30 minutes long. So just following this sequence, using the at-home units, just the at-home units works for that, what you just mentioned, a condensed version of the Amplify Science lessons. Because in these at-home units, our curriculum developers have done the work of prioritizing, highlighting, and condensing activities and lessons without disrupting the coherence and the standards alignment for the most part. So I would suggest using these if that's a concern for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and also at any point, just feel free to, I don't want to waste your time, just so there's anything that you'd like to focus on, just let me know. I will go through the session, but we don't necessarily have to entirely or at all. So just let me know. The original intent of today's session was focusing on the assessment system, but again, any questions, just interrupt me. We can steer the session to meet your needs, and that's what we're here for.
No, I don't mind going over the assessment system. That kind of piqued my interest, so that's fine.
Good. Okay, good. So you're in the right place. So in terms of the assessment system, we want to start with the progress build. The progress build is Amplify Science's unit-specific learning progression. So if I were to go inside any unit, I'm just going to stay with my 7th grade example. So I'll just go to plate motion, just as an example. When you jump down to the unit guide and you go, there's the progress build here. And the progress build is fleshed out here. The bold are the summary statements, and underneath it is some elaboration. It's basically the unit-specific learning progression, a teacher-facing version of what students need to figure out over the course of the unit. And it's structured sequentially, so each level builds on the previous one, and students' conceptual understanding becomes more sophisticated with each level. So we tend to represent it through this visual to capture all those points. You can see students start with their prior knowledge at the bottom and they progress through the levels. And the progress build is important, one, because it anchors our assessment system, and two, it informs the coherent sequencing of our lessons. So other reasons why the progress build is important, it describes the way that students' explanatory understanding gets more sophisticated. By really internalizing the progress build, it gives a teacher a clearer understanding of the structure of the unit, why the lessons are sequenced in a certain way, and why the assessments are where they are. So by really aligning instruction and assessments to the progress build, how student understanding is developing during the course of the unit can really help teachers support students by modifying instruction in a more intentional, meaningful, and informed way. So let's take a look at, I'm just gonna go over here, the metabolism progress build. Even if we just look at plate motion, if you were to take a moment to really read the progress build, and a useful exercise is to do this alongside educators or encourage them, is to really understand how the different levels are connected, what new ideas are added from each level, because you'll notice the progress build is in fact cumulative. New ideas are introduced and ideas from previous levels are refined and revised. Again, here's the progress build level I just showed you from plate motion. And of course, I'll skip through these question parts and I'll just rely on you to interrupt me at any point if you have any questions, comments, and whatnot. So that was a little bit about the progress build. That's what anchors our assessment system. Let's look at the different types of assessments, formative and summative. So we like to call our Amplify Science assessments credible, actionable, timely, credible in that they provide reliable information about student learning. Actionable in our assessments really give information on how to adjust instruction. And timely in that teachers, when they're administering the formative assessments, don't need to start or stop instruction. They're actually embedded within the fabric of instruction. Here are different types of assessments and pretty much what they're called. The formative assessments, as you've already been using in your school, they're used to guide instruction. We have the per unit, on the fly, and the critical juncture. And the summative assessment is that assessment that we have to really summatively measure student learning at the end of the unit. And in grades 6 through 8, we have the end of unit assessment and also the science seminar arguments. So if we were to anchor the assessment system on the progress build, here's what it looks like. The pre-unit assessment, represented by this bar at the bottom, measures student knowledge coming into the unit, like what kind of prior knowledge do they have, what background knowledge, what misconceptions. The end of unit assessment measures students' progress along all 3 dimensions of the new standards. And then you also notice these hummingbirds. These hummingbirds are our on-the-fly assessments embedded within instruction. They typically happen every lesson or every other lesson. And then we have our critical juncture at the end. You'll see that it's very intentionally placed at the end of progress build level 2. And that is in fact another formative assessment meant to measure students' attainment of proficiency at progress build level 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you, instead of just going through this, I think it's going to be more meaningful to actually show you where the different assessments are. So we'll just kind of look at where each of them are. So in terms of it being anchored on the progress build, you'll see that here are the on the fly, pre-unit, end of unit. I'm just going to go ahead and show you an example of where they are so you get a sense of what kind of evaluation guidance is there, and also what other resources teachers have to support their evaluation of the assessments. So that can actually be found, what I just mentioned, under this assessment system doc. And we'll go ahead and navigate to that right now. I'll go ahead and just stay on plate motion for now. So if you go to assessment system right there, I usually like to open it up as a printable PDF. This particular document, once it opens up, will give you a list of all the assessments. The beginning is some useful information about different features of our assessment, the components, so definitely a suggested read. If you go to the second page, you'll see a table, and the table at the left, it'll tell you the assessment type, where you can find it, and the evaluation guidance. So let's say you're wondering about, okay, critical juncture, what is that? Where is it? And what's the structure of it? What kind of evaluation guidance do we have? So you would look at the assessment type. And there we go, 2.6. The critical junctures in 2.6, and I see it's multiple choice and written response questions. So then you can navigate to 2.6. And you'll see that the critical juncture assessment is here. This is in paper form, but remember, if students are if teachers are using the digital interface, they can also submit the responses here, students, and it goes to the classwork feature and it's auto-graded. And then we have our embedded formative assessments. If I go back to the unit landing page, this gives you a summary of all the on-the-fly assessments, all in one place. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you just put a few minutes on the clock to allow you to explore these unit level assessment documents and come back with any questions.
Okay. Okay.
Great. Do you have any particular questions or any particular assessment that you're wondering more about, or that I can go into?
Not at this time. I think my next question would be, and I had gone to one on the administrator reports, but like if the teachers are using this, if I would be able to see where the students are and like what they're scoring, as far as that.
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. So I can definitely go into that more. That's actually coming up. So, you know, you got a chance to look at the formative assessments. I do want to mention, since you had mentioned time, you know, being a potential issue this year, that of course, here are some ways that teachers can formatively assess, and perhaps your educators are already doing that during this remote hybrid time, Nearpod, Flipgrid. But that also, before we go into the Jamboard, I had a slide there. That's actually upcoming, that in the at-home units, the assessment system has also been streamlined. So teachers have a lot of latitude in really determining what assessments to administer and what not to. And I think that's important to keep in mind, especially since you mentioned that, you know, condensing the units was something that was a priority. So if educators were to go into the teacher overview right here, you'll see that at the end of each chapter, there are some assessment considerations. And in these assessment considerations, it'll give the educator a suggestion that if you'd like to, you can, for example, add this assessment. And in order to do that, you would have to go back to the original teacher's guide. So again, the assessment system is streamlined. I've seen the, you know, the pre-unit assessment sometime taken out. So again, that legwork has been done for educators. And also, you can also continue to administer the benchmark assessments. Remember, the benchmark assessments are in your global navigation menu, and you would click this icon, and they occur at the end of a certain set of units. If you had a chance.
I'm sorry, can I just stop you for 1 second? In the slide back, you had said that Nearpod. Have teachers used Nearpod with this program?
Yes, we just gathered these tools based on what we've heard so far. But yeah, I've heard Nearpod a lot. I've heard Pear Deck, of course, Board, and then all these Google Suite features. I can say I personally really like Google Forms because it sends back the responses in the form of a spreadsheet, Google Sheet. So that's my favorite, I could say. But I've heard a lot about Pear Deck and Nearpod being used in conjunction with the slides, because we already give the slides. So teachers customize them with those, and that really allows for formative assessment, because you know, as you explored our formative assessments, you know, if I go back, our formative assessments really happen during student learning. So by including a, you know, a Pear Deck, students are entering their responses as the learning is happening, but remotely. So we found that to be a popular resource to use in conjunction, tool rather, with the Amplify Science program. And then, of course, there's the benchmark assessments that can also be administered. A reminder that they're in the global navigation menu. But I'd like to provide, I'll put that in the chat right here, is we have a data collection tool for on-the-fly assessments that it's not in the program. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. If you wanted to distribute that to your educators, you can feel free. I'll go ahead and open it up. It's just a fairly simple tool. This is not, this is the, oh, okay. I have the wrong tool here, but I'll open that up shortly and provide that to you. That it seems like the table is missing. But we have a short tool that allows teachers to collect student data. It's just a very simple tool with name, look for, and a place for them, for teachers to take notes if they wanted to. I'll go ahead and pull that up shortly. Okay. So the summative assessments, just to go through that very briefly, since it seems like explored the assessments. Again, they serve as a final evaluation of students' understanding of the core ideas and their facility with the other dimensions of the unit in terms of the standards. There are rubrics and also sometimes possible responses, and there's a tab in the lesson in which the possible responses tab happens. The end of unit assessment questions, here's a sample again. You have multiple choice and then you have written response. And then there's very detailed rubrics that, again, there's possible responses aligned to each progress build level. And then you also have three-dimensional rubrics, a rubric assessing students' understanding of the science concepts, of the cross-cutting concepts, and also of the focal science and engineering practice of constructing scientific arguments. Skip through the break. So I just wanted to get to the assessment tool that you were interested in hearing more about. So those are the three big tools we have. Of course, we have that administrator dashboard, and then we have classwork and reporting. So let's just go through each one, and you can, of course, I know you mentioned interest in this, so just interrupt me at any point if there's a certain part that you're curious about. So the classwork reporting feature, again, the teacher would go to the global navigation menu and click classwork. And in this particular feature, in classwork and reporting, as you can see here, teachers get an elegant visual of how students are performing at each of the progress build levels. So here's just a sample. So for the pre-unit assessment, we have 87% of our students at progress builds 0, which is a expected place to be, because we don't want all of our students to be at progress build level 3. Then we don't need to do the unit. So it gives you a nice visual aligned to the learning progression. In addition, the classwork, if teachers do use it, what's nice is it saves them time because it auto-grades the multiple choice, and it gives teachers a place to submit feedback to students, and students can log into their platform to view the feedback. We talked a little bit about this. It seems like you know where the Amplify Science at-home resources are. We just have this for a larger group in which folks are at different places. This is what I mentioned before. This is the slide I was searching for earlier, that in the at-home units, remember, there are separate assessment considerations. For example, in this particular unit, it says each chapter outline contains considerations. Generally, we recommend the following, and it gives particular recommendations both overall at the unit and then at the chapter level. So I know you said administrator reports is something you're interested in. Why don't I go ahead and just give you a brief overview. Rachel, do you have your login for the administrator reports?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'll go ahead and go into some features. I think this is, of course, something that came out this year, and very powerful in terms of gathering student data across different classes. So just the basics. So when you log in, you're going to see something like this. And as you can see here, I don't have a hypothetical account to go in just because the data is sensitive. But I have a little screenshot here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you a video shortly. But when you go in, it allows you to see student and teacher usage and then student performance data by the unit for the entire year. It also gives you, these are the basics of what Administrator Dashboard provides you with. Student teacher usage, student performance by the unit for the year. It gives you a further detailed assessment data report that you can download, and this, the dashboard and report, it updates every 24 hours. So it seems like you already know how to access it, but this is how you access it. It's in that, it's available in your account. You click Administrator Dashboard. So once you log in, what are you going to see? You're going to see a quick glance of the number of active students versus total licensed students, and number of active teachers versus total licensed teachers up here. And then if you were to click right here, okay, you're going to get, by clicking on that, you get a further breakdown. So I'm just going to go there. So when you click that, you get a further breakdown of student and teacher activity, including daily active users, the units that were taught in the last week, a number of students who completed an assessment, number of students who've done work in a unit, and you can hover over each report for further details. The outcomes section gives you exactly that. It tells you, are the kiddos actually mastering the content? And it gives you, it allows you to view their progress build levels during each of these key assessments. And then if you were to click download data, it allows you to download actually an Excel sheet, which includes data for the year. I'll go ahead. Any questions you have about the dashboard? Again, we have a reminder, we have a tech team available by phone or email, and there's also always the Amplify Science chat, which also happens to be on the bottom right-hand corner of your administrator dashboard. I have a little video, maybe that'll be a little bit more illuminating. I'll go ahead and play that for you.
Welcome to Administrator Reports. Amplify Science grades 6 through 8 school and district administrators now have self-service access to usage and outcomes reports. Reports are available directly from your Amplify My account and updated every 24 hours. Upon login, administrators can easily monitor total active students and teachers on the Snapshots page. From here, administrators can navigate to explore reports or download data. By clicking on Explore Reports, administrators can navigate to both usage and outcome reports. District administrators or multi-school administrators can use the drop-down menu to filter a specific school. The usage report is an overview of student and teacher activity, including daily active users, units taught in the last week, number of students who have completed a reading assessment by unit, and number of students who have done work in the curriculum by unit. The outcome reports shows administrators if students are mastering the science content by their progress build levels from pre-unit, critical juncture, and end-of-unit assessments. Detailed assessment data report views are available and can also be downloaded as a CSV file. If you need additional help, just click on the Amplify chat icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Interested in learning more? Visit myamplify.com/help/Amplify Science.
That's basically just a video version of what I just showed you. Hopefully that was a little bit more illuminating. Are there any particular questions, Rachel, you had about, these were just some reflect and share questions we had ready for the larger group about the administrator dashboards?
Not at this time.
And then finally, I just wanted to go over, so those were the basic, we went over a little bit about the formative, summative assessments and the actual tools available. How about some other tools? A reminder, the Amplify Science NYC resources site. Remember, we have a separate section for admin resources. And here we have, for example, a Getting Started with Amplify Science 6 to 8 checklist. There's also an implementation rubric. For year 2 Amplify schools, in addition, we suggest using the scope and sequence with the calendar. It gives you a suggested pacing. And of course, on the NYC resources site, we have the companion kit. And don't forget about the remote learning resources. There's also another, I think, useful sheet with plenty of links. I'll go ahead and drop that into the chat. This is what I was referring to right here. So on this, and I'll go ahead and live navigate, there's pretty much links to whatever possible questions can come up. So this is something nice to have handy, and navigate to that in a moment. I'm just waiting for my slide to load. So right here, there's the direct link to your NYC Resources homepage, the resource, the description, and a particular link. So let's say, you have a new teacher wondering about login. Here is a description of the resource and where it can be found. So there's direct links. Have a teacher who needs some more information about the at-home units. Here's a link to a help article. There's also links to videos. So just a great 3-pager to have with all the links in one place. So here we just had a scenario that we were going to go into breakout rooms to discuss. I'll go ahead and read it. When you look at data from 7th grade classes, you notice that a specific teacher has a low login activity and there's little to no activity for his or her students. In comparison to the other 7th grade teachers, the data shows this teacher is far behind with the Amplify Science instruction. Furthermore, you believe that 7th grade teaching team is generally embracing a student-centered approach and working hard for their students. And we were going to ask folks to join breakout rooms to answer these questions. But as you can see from the various resources we shared, this is the type of data you can really get from the administrator dashboard. Because remember, the administrator dashboard pulls directly from Classwork and Reporting. So it'll really allow you to further hone the type and level of support you provide your educators. So just to think about in a scenario like this, what information is it telling you about student learning? What could be some of the causes and what steps can you use to support the teacher, and also what Amplify specific supports can you offer? And a reminder, look at the NYC resources site. Plenty of resources there. There's in fact a look for tool, there's an implementation rubric and the like. So that's pretty much what I have for you today. Just some key takeaways from today's session. Just remember the Amplify Science assessment. It's made up of several assessments, formative and summative. The formatives are embedded into instruction, and they really allow teachers to adjust instruction in a way that's meaningful and immediately responsive. Don't forget about the new administrator dashboard. It gives an opportunity for admins to really get an in-depth view of teacher and student data, so you can support teachers with the next steps. And then various other features of the Amplify Science program, both in the Program Hub and the NYC Resources site. There's plenty of resources and opportunities for teachers and administrators to ensure that the program is in fact implemented with fidelity. So here is the Amplify Science resource site. Just a reminder, these are the different resources you can get. And that's a very abbreviated version of today's session. We only had one participant. Rachel, thank you so much for joining. Before we close out, is there anything else I can help you with?